Did it again. There are so many of us on, I couldn't find myself.
Hey, there you go.
So you're having computer issues this morning.
Yeah, major computer issues. Yeah, look how red I am. Even though I have a red shirt, it's like I'm over red.
Oh no, what happened?
I don't even have a sunburn.
What happened?
I don't know. It's computers.
Well, I noticed that yesterday, because even though we have a disk drive for me to start downloading all of the videos on, I kept putting it off and putting it off. And so yesterday my computer went, guess what? You don't have any more space and I'm not doing anything more.
There we go.
So I went, okay, the whole day stops. And now we start offloading videos onto the external drive. So that's what I did all day yesterday. But I had to restart, because it had its thing going.
Yeah.
So did you happen to see the news this morning?
I haven't even turned TV on or.
Oh, I don't watch the TV. What's the matter with you? Where did that even come from?
I haven't even looked at my phone yet. In fact, I need to charge it because it's dead.
What is the matter with you and technology this morning, Michael? My computer doesn't work. My phone's dead. All right,
that's how it should be. Get back to normal life.
Here's what I read this morning. Oklahoma Supreme Court rules in favor of Edmond Public Schools in library book dispute.
Oh, yeah. Knew that was going to happen.
Yep. The Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled in favor of Edmond Public Schools on Tuesday, agreeing with the district that local school boards, not state officials, have the power to decide which books to include in school libraries. And, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we're all, we're super all for local control here. But the problem is when the school board does like they do to Bryce and pitch them out or not listen to them, then what recourse do parents have?
Yeah. Well, we knew they jumped on that lawsuit kind of prematurely, overruling the school board, and the school board's who makes those decisions anyway.
We live in an upside down world.
Yeah.
All right. So, Michael.
Yes. Here's the good part of that. Now we know exactly who to point the finger at.
Oh, you know what? That's true.
There's no way around it. It is the school board that's allowing those books.
That's an excellent point. Well done, Michael. That's exactly right. So they're the ones doing it. So, okay, parents, get on your school board, either get them out or ride them like a donkey. I don't know, but do something there. All right. So we've got a bunch of people on this morning, and I think it's because we have some guests that people want to see. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So we have talked about election integrity for quite a number of months now here. And when we had the discussion with Wendi and Amber about redoing essentially the voter rolls, Chris Powell, who is the head of the Libertarian Party in Oklahoma, said, hey, I don't agree. And we said, great, let's do a show on it. Because, honestly, I'm sure you and I know me, we're not perfect people. We just have opinions about stuff. And when you stop listening to opinion and when you start saying, I know best and I know everything, you quit learning.
Yeah. Well, I will just throw in my 2 cents in this deal. When I ran, and we sent out 20,000+ postcards to our register. We got thousands of postcards back. That was major waste of money. And so,
and that means that there are people on the rolls that aren't there. That's what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
At those addresses. And that's what the issue is. Okay. Well, let's do this. Michael, you may end up you're the best one at doing, configuring our screen. You may have to really get into it since there are 5 of us here. So I'm going to bring everybody on. I'm going to bring on Wendi, and I'm going to bring on Amber, and I'm going to bring on Chris, and I'm going to hope we get all in here. We did. Yay. Yay. Okay, now if Michael can figure out how to configure us, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll look at that in the background while you get going.
All right. Okay, so good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's just go. Let's start with you, Chris, and then let's go back around. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about you. I mean, we know each other since you are on Bethany City Council, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I drew the short straw, and I'm currently the Oklahoma Libertarian Party chair. But I'm on the Bethany City Council, been there since 2019. And I was the Libertarian candidate for governor in 2018. Rex Lawhorn and I put Joe Exotic in last place in the primary, and then I wound up getting the nomination. And that was really a fascinating experience.
It was fun to watch. I'm sorry. But it was fun to watch. So Chris, have you been kind of watching the videos that we've been doing, or how did you find out that we were doing election integrity?
On Twitter, X is what it's called now, but I just happened to see the commentary on Twitter, and that's what I responded to. That's I'm not really a podcast or video guy, but I see a lot of social media from a lot of different people, and read a lot of different articles. So that's kind of and I know you've been doing this for a while. Your Twitter feed shows up in my feed a lot, so I get to see what you guys are talking about.
Good. Okay. All right. So Amber, just quick for people who may not know who you are, just kind of give us a little bit of background on you.
Well, my husband and I, we moved here with our kids after my husband retired from the Army in 2018. And about 3 years ago, we got involved with election integrity, election stuff, because we were kind of curious. We were hearing things all over the country. And so we wanted to see, based on facts only, do we have the same problems? What are the nuances? What's good? What's bad? And so that's what we've been working on for the last 3 years. And as far as like a background, it's really been the military lifestyle. And even when, him being retired for 7 years now, you still are in that type of system, and you have to navigate through the political process of all of it. So it just comes naturally to analytically look at things. And my love of looking at information came from genealogy.
Oh, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
Because I was adopted, and that's a big long story, but looking for my family and putting those puzzle pieces together. So,
and Chris, you are too, right? Into genealogy.
Yes.
Yeah. So now you and Amber and your genealogy. And Wendi, what about you? How did you get your start in election integrity in Oklahoma?
Well, the same with Amber. I think we all watched the 2020 election and wanted to make sure that Oklahoma elections were, the best in the country as stated, and everything was on the up and up. So I started researching it and happened to run into Amber on the America First Audits chat. So all 50 states had a chat, Oklahoma's chat. We were all in there together researching and looking into the Oklahoma data. And so we've known each other for 3 years, but I moved here 17 years ago with my family from Texas. I'm originally from Illinois, but anyway, Oklahoma is near and dear to my heart. It's where my kids have been raised. And so looking into the system and making sure that we have everything on the up and up and everything is good for our children as we move forward is my main goal here. But also currently I'm the state director for Restore Liberty. And, with the elections, I co-founded Oklahoma Liberty Integrity Group. So I was actually just in Pawhuska last night doing an election integrity presentation out there for the Oklahoma Second Amendment Association.
Awesome.
It's
Well,
been
now,
a
and
couple weeks.
the funny thing is that while these two are into genealogy, you're into geology.
I'm a geologist. Yes, I am. I minored in physics, but also I have been researching my family's genealogy for the past 10 years with a cousin of mine in Virginia. So,
Awesome.
oh, sorry, Maryland. He's outside of DC. So it's either, Virginia or Maryland. But yes, genealogical research is one of my loves as well. So when I see people that are researching, I always smile, just it's a lot of fun, and the analytical mind necessary for that is
that's what I was going to say, is that I think everybody here has a super analytical mind, and that's kind of why we do what we do. And I think I just want people to know that no, we're not state employees, or we're not involved in that kind of thing. But you don't have to be. And that's the beauty of this. What we try to do here on this podcast is show people that you have your own mind. It's an intelligent mind. So you go out and research, listen to all these things, and get some different ideas and decide for yourself. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm not quite sure how to do this, but I think so we're just going to kind of feel our way through this. Let's start with you, Amber, and you tell us a little bit about why it is you feel like it's important and let's do this so that we don't get too far afield, because I think all of us, once we start getting talking, it's like it can go on. So let me give you about 5 minutes. And if you don't use that time, that's fine, but we'll just not go over 5 minutes. Tell me why you feel like it's important that we archive, and this is, make sure I'm saying this properly, that we archive the current voter rolls and that we re-register everybody to vote in Oklahoma. Go.
Well, it starts out that Terry and I, along with when we were under Oklahoma Liberty Watch, we put 7 teams together, and they were to canvass 8 counties. And it was based on a subset of data that was pulled from July of 2021. And it was information that was ran through the National Change of Address database that we did ourselves, had the group come in and help us do. And what we found on that throughout the 8 counties and Oklahoma County and Tulsa County were of those 8, was that there was about a 40% error rate in voter rolls. So the concern is, what was that?
40%?
About 40%. Now, the subset of data was specifically targeting the number of people registered at one location. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can look at it, but that was a subset we were going after. Because it was kind of the lowest hanging fruit, and people were hearing that there was tons of people living at one address. What we found is that they would, in some cases, they would have the exact same name, but the name would be spelled a little bit different, or it would be the previous homeowner that hasn't lived there in a really long time. Or you had a situation where, one of them was a mobile home park. But the problem came with that was that we had a man that worked in Oklahoma, but he has all of his residency and stuff in Tennessee and votes in Tennessee, but not Oklahoma. However, he's been on our voter rolls since 2012. Now, he doesn't have any voter credit, but he's been on the rolls. So the question is how did that happen?
He hasn't even lived here.
He hasn't even lived here.
Okay.
Right. So then you have the other scenario where we know that when we had the terrible withdrawal with Afghanistan, and we know that Bagram Airfield, it should have been blown up and not handed over to anybody, and China has control of it now, right? Well, I think it was a couple years now, but there were 2 absentee ballots sent to service members at a Bagram Airfield address. And we know, being prior military, that that's going to get stopped in country because it goes by an APO AE address. It'll get stopped maybe in Germany or Italy or somewhere else. So that's problematic. That, there was only 2 of them, but 2 is 2, and it's an issue,
Right.
right? So then the other, there's just a lot of issues that I'm looking at, like, for instance, the physical address. We're not supposed to have section, township, and range on there unless it's giving exact directions like northeast, west, etc., based on the laws. And I'm like, how is section, township, and range getting on there? It's just showing the numbers. And so when I would, certain addresses would pop out to me, I noticed that that I would go to the county tax assessor records, and I would look at that address, and I started noticing that the section, township, and range is on the county tax assessor records.
Yes,
and so,
correct.
Okay, and so I know the laws say, okay, well, you can do XYZ, we can utilize this and that, and like whatever 911 the services uses, right? So I contacted someone that works for 911 that's a friend, and I said, do you guys utilize this part of going out on calls? And she said, no, we don't utilize that, because section, township, and range is going to tell you, let's say that property is 10 acres. It's just going to give you that 10-acre plot. It's not going to give you the exact address.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No specific address.
Right. Now you can put section, township, and range in Google Maps, and it will populate where to go. Right. But by law, that's not supposed to be sitting on our voter rolls. And we have them sitting there even today.
Okay. By state law, we're not supposed to have them there.
Right. The Oklahoma statute, OS 26.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Says we shouldn't have section, township, and range
on. It doesn't give authority to utilize it. Correct.
Okay.
In the manner that it's on the voter rolls.
Okay. You got 28 seconds. Anything else?
I'm sure there's a lot more, but that's good for now.
You're just getting started.
That's exactly right. She's just warming up. All right. So let's do the same thing for you, Chris. So let's get you on here, and then you kind of tell us in 5 minutes. I mean, kind of see if you want to answer Amber's or something specifically, just so we can keep that conversation going. Go.
Well, I would say that my experience in using the voter lists in a number of different capacities for the 2018 gubernatorial primary, for instance, I got the list of registered libertarians, and I went all over the state knocking doors as of registered libertarians, because that's who could vote in our primary. And so, I that was in a lot of rural areas and a lot of back roads and things like that. And I found that, of course, the people that were registered libertarian, we've only been recognized since 2016. So they had been registered in less than a 2-year period or changed their registration. So those were really pretty accurate. I didn't find a lot of cases where people had, naturally there were some instances where people had moved and things like that, but it was pretty up to date, because these people had all either just registered or just changed their registration. Over time, though, you're going to get a high degree of people who are, not at the address that they registered at unless they've kept that updated. And when you move, that's not necessarily the first thing that you think of. And some people move more than others, and it's going to be, if you don't have to pay a bill to somebody or something like that, that's something that is not, top of mind as far as keeping your address up to date. That doesn't mean that those people are not, should be removed from the rolls. There perhaps should be a better mechanism for helping people keep their address up to date with that. That would certainly be an interesting thing to explore as to how you might be able to do that. But the idea of re-registering everybody in the state, that is, I can only imagine the number of people who, after such a thing, would show up for an election after that, thinking that they've been registered, having been voting for years and years and years, and not being able to vote. And of course, we don't have same-day registration in Oklahoma, which I'm not necessarily an advocate for, but there's no remedy for it if we have this re-registration, and these people who are regular voters who pay attention to everything, actually know who the candidates are in their ballot, show up, and they've somehow missed this re-registration thing and they can't vote. I would hate that for a lot of voters. I would also say that Oklahoma runs a very tight ship as far as its voter rolls, again, dependent upon the lives of individuals who may move frequently or that kind of thing. And we really run a very good system, and it's very transparent as far as members of the public being able to get the voter lists and look at them and look at the record of how somebody's voted if they want to do so. And there's other states where they keep those voter lists where private, where the public cannot see them, and that kind of lack of transparency, that would be something that would, if we were to move towards that here, that would be very troubling to me. But we're very open with being able to get that data out there. I would also point out that there's some that one of an interesting difference with different states is that North Dakota doesn't even have voter registration. So this is the idea of registration, like the idea of how we do our primaries compared to the way other places do their primaries. It's not the only way that a thing can be done. But I think in upsetting the entire apple cart, because people tend to move, so, a lot of people tend to move from time to time, is not necessarily the best way to do it. So I would be interested to see what might be proposed to help people keep their address more up to date. But I don't see that is something that we should dump out all of the information that we have just because people move occasionally. As far as 911 goes, I was actually a 911 operator for 6 years, and in Oklahoma City, which does have some rural areas, but not as rural as, say, Roger Mills County, for instance, or something like that.
Well, let's get back to that. Put that on because we ran out of time. So put that on your list of things to get back to. Because that's interesting that you were an actual 911 operator. So let's put that down on our list of things. And then Wendi, I'm going to call you up. And I think at this point, because you kind of have a broad overview of you're kind of our broad overview gal, why don't you kind of talk maybe about what Amber said versus what Chris said? Does that sound fair?
Sure.
Okay. All right, go.
Okay, well, the issue with the voter rolls in Oklahoma, of course, is with Amber and I both being in election integrity, our concerns are related to the issue of election integrity in Oklahoma. We have found so many anomalies in our elections. The voter rolls are actually a large part of that. And Amber and Terry early on found out in our investigation that there were over 207,000 registered voters or voter registrations that didn't even have a registration date on our rolls. So the issue of efficiency and cleaning the rolls, and the issue of election integrity and making sure that our elections cannot be compromised in any way, of course, with the issue of election integrity being national news now, is and it actually has been for the past 3 years. The previous president has been harping on it, of course, since 2020. And we've gone around the state, and I've gone around the state. I know Amber has as well. Mentioned this in her and Terry's work, is that, with the elections being what they are, and the issue of integrity being in the uppermost mind, when you have bloated voter rolls like we have in Oklahoma,
well, give your definition of what a bloated voter roll is. So let's be as specific as we can. So what is a bloated voter roll to you?
Rolls with registrations that don't belong to a person. Okay. So they're bloated. Like Chris was saying, with the people moving in the addresses, those previous registrations are still on the rolls. Those need to be removed. it still remains on the rolls. We have an issue with worrying about potentially election or voter fraud when we're trying to clean up the state and we're trying to make sure that the elections are as clean as possible. Bloated voter rolls are one of the dangers with that. We can't have people using those registrations to cast votes.
Okay, that's what I was going to get at. So your main specific thing, and I'm assuming Amber's concern as well, but we'll get back to Amber here in a second. Your main concern is if the rolls are bloated and there are extra people on them, that people wanting to commit voter fraud can use that information to cast a ballot themselves, because those people aren't going to be the actual people aren't going to be voting in the election. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And actually, there was a study done with computer experts that were looking at the machines and the voter rolls. This is back in 2018, even before the 2020 election, that stated that all of our lists that are and all of our voter rolls and all of our lists that are online are actually subject to malicious alteration by outside parties. So we have an issue where our voter rolls, especially with them being online, is a danger. It's a problem if you've got people getting into the system and potentially having access to this information. When you get people getting into the system, if they can alter the rolls, if they can alter the lists online, that's a concern. And that's actually out of I believe it's a National Academies of Science study. These are not people that are conspiracy theorists. These are not people that have any axe to grind. They were looking at the voter system in its entirety in across the nation and trying to protect and preserve it. So they were raising red flags back then about the problems with voter lists across the country. So we have an issue in Oklahoma where we know our rolls are bloated. We have all these excess registrations, and rather than try to go out and use a scalpel and remove this one, it would take forever, number one. So archiving the rolls and re-registering everyone to vote at this point is going to be the most efficient way to get clean voter rolls in Oklahoma to help ensure that our elections are secure. So that's where I'm coming from.
All right. So we've kind of wound that up. So let's bring Amber back in again. We're just going to go round robin. So let's bring Amber back in. Okay. So now, Amber, you've heard what Wendi had to say. You've heard Chris's concerns. So where do we go from here? Where do you feel like the conversation needs to move off so that we can get to a point where we're talking specifically about that issue?
Well, let me just give an analogy, and it should be an easy one that most people should understand. If you have a pantry that's full of food and it's organized, you've got it all great and it's awesome, and then you go to the grocery store and you put something else in the pantry, and then you have family members that come in and take it out, but they don't replace it right back where it's supposed to, and you just repeat. Your pantry becomes extremely messy. And in fact, what happens is you get expired food. I mean, this has happened to us, like canned goods and stuff gets expired, and now I can't even go and donate it if I've chosen I'm not going to eat it. So now I have to just throw it away. And the reality is really our voter rolls, I feel, are kind of in that stage. I don't feel that they have been maintained well enough per what the laws are. So the state election board and the county, if they have the authority, are they cleaning them up effectively? We know that, yes, Chris, like you said, people don't always notify that they've moved, right? But the number one thing that does happen across the states is that most people, not all, but most people will obtain a new driver's license, right, or state ID card in another state when they move there. And I'm not talking in-state, I'm just talking about out-of-state. And that state is supposed to notify the previous state that the driver's license has moved, and same with the voter information. Now, we know that Our voter information is not tied to the DMV per se in this state. However, it is because our tag agencies in different places are collecting 50 cents per voter registration that they're obtaining at the DMV. So we know that there's a conversation happening between states to get these individuals off. I
Okay,
know.
so say that one more time. I'm not quite understanding. What are they paying for? What's
Per the law, the
Okay.
OS 26, these tag agencies in our state are paid 50 cents per voter registration that's done at their office. So we know that the tag agencies are involved in this state with voter registration of some sort. So when someone obtains a state issued ID and driver's license, that's being communicated back to this state. So like if I get one in Oregon, it gets communicated here. And then why are we not pulling people off the voter rolls if we're pulling, right?
Yeah.
Right. I don't like the DMV being involved, but we've already got their hands in the cookie jar already. That would be one effective way I could see. Right. The DMV could notify the state election board. The state election board could verify, and then they could be removed.
Okay. So let me ask you this about, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let me ask you this about dead people. So this is my mom's heavenly birthday today. Happy birthday, Mom. When she passed away, because I'm involved and I know, I immediately called the Oklahoma Election Board and said, my mom needs to be removed. I had to send a copy of her death certificate to them to get her removed. And I did that. But what happens to all, because the voter rolls are not only bloated with people who moved, they're bloated with people who have passed away and nobody's recorded them as passed away.
So the state election board is actually responsible for cleaning that up. It talks about using the Social Security Death Index record. I'd have to go back because I haven't read it in a little while, but I think that there's something in there that also, I believe that the mortuaries or whatever, they can, the coroner can report.
Okay. Right.
And that's one way. And then yours is the other way to remove somebody that's deceased. So how often are they running those? How often are they running the national change of address to clean up the databases? So the dead people, they should be removed. We see that there are individuals with crazy birth dates. There was one, oh my gosh, it was like 1901 on the 2021 voter rolls. And that could be an error of someone typing it incorrectly.
Sure, could be 1981,
right? Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that until our daughter one of our daughters registered to vote, and the county election board misspelled her name. And when she went into the Oklahoma voter portal, she was unable to look it up, right?
Okay.
So a lot of our problems on the rolls are also human error. So who's going back and fixing those?
All right, so let's stop there. So now let's bring in Chris. Trying to remember who's next. Okay, so Chris, Amber gave some really specific things about what are happening, and the DMV tie was really interesting. I mean, any kind of rebuttal to that? I mean, what are you thinking there?
I did not know that they got a payment for those. So now when people ask me about registration, I'm going to tell them to turn in their form at the library. And just because I don't think that the tag agent they're able to do business because they have this grant from government. They don't need to be getting paid to be doing government stuff. But one of the things that is I think people might be interested to look at is the monthly voter registration statistics at the Oklahoma Election Board website.
And you can get them, by the way, if you sign up. You can get those sent to you directly every month in your inbox.
Right, but they're all posted there, going back as to about I think 2016, maybe 2014, and you can see where in each county the statistics of what they done, how many people that they've removed from the rolls, how many change of registration from one party to another. All of those changes, the statistics on how many people did what, you can look at that there. So those things are being updated monthly. You can also go to the Oklahoma voter portal if there's anybody that that has passed recently and you want to make sure that they're not on the voter roll anymore. You can put in their name and date of birth and see if they pop up. Anybody can do that at the Oklahoma voter portal. So there's a lot of different ways, and I think something that has just occurred to me is that when people go to vote, even if they've moved, they know where they're registered. They know where their precinct is, and they'll go to their precinct and vote. That all of us know people who have done that. Whether you know that they did it or not, we all know people who have just moved and then they went to vote at their old precinct.
Yeah.
If we were to have some sort of mechanism on voting day at those precincts where people could update their address, that would probably go a long way towards cleaning up the address change problem. I'll also point out that Oklahoma was part of an interstate organization that compared voter lists, so that if you went and registered to vote in another state, that information would come back. And the legislature took us out of that organization a couple of years ago. I think there were some other issues with that, but I don't know that whatever other issues there were are greater than cleaning up our voter rolls when somebody registers in another state, because that is something that otherwise it's really difficult for the state to know, so that they can keep track of that. If there's a way to tie in the DMV records from other states to do that, where we know that people move to another state, because once they're outside of our state border, that's a lot harder to keep track of than people in state. So
can I go back?
I certainly think there's things that can be done, but I don't think that a massive re-registering is required.
All right. So if you don't mind, I hate to use your time, but can you go back and tell me again, the state took us out of and I know Amber knew that because she was, agreeing with you. What was this now? The state took us out of what?
I think, and Amber probably knows better than I do, that the acronym for it was ERIC, and I don't recall what that stands for.
Okay. So
Electronic Registration Information Center, and it was bad. And I'm going to give you real quick a reason why. So my husband and I grew up in Oregon. When he retired from the Army, we moved back to Oregon for about a year and a half. And him and I were both registered in 2 different counties, but in the state of Oregon. And when we moved out here, we changed voter registrations. Both of us had a little bit different dates. But I went back and looked, when I was doing all of this stuff a couple years ago. And my husband and I were both on the Oregon voter rolls still. And Oregon, we submitted everything that was required, and we had to do it several times before they actually pulled us off. And the only reason why they pulled us off is because I knew the jargon. I knew that they were in ERIC, and I called the Secretary of State's office and I said, listen up, here's what's happening. I know what you're doing. I know what system that you're using, and you better remove me. And I'm tired of having to fight it, because it was over 6 months that I was trying to get us removed. Right. And what ERIC does is it pops people back in. And the problem is it's a nonprofit. They take that information, our private information, and they sell it to other people. And what ERIC uses is the National Change of Address and the Social Security Death Index to clean it up. But guess what the Oklahoma statute says? That the state election board has the authority to utilize those 2 same mechanisms to clean up our rolls. We don't need to spend thousands of dollars a month to a NGO, right, nonprofit, to clean up our rolls, when the previous and current legislators have given the authority to the secretary.
Well, thank you for that, Amber. I'm so sorry, though. We stepped, Chris. We stepped on like a minute 40 of your time. Do you have anything else?
I would say I knew when Amber was shaking her head that she would know more about ERIC specifically than I do. and I'm not going to disagree with any of those things that she said as far as those other issues. But the idea of a national organization where states can collaborate to make sure that they have clean voter rolls with some stricter guidelines that organization has to follow as far as what they have to do. And I would think that if we're going to participate in that, we can that the state of Oklahoma could put conditions on its participation. That would be a way to keep track of people when they move from state to state and keep them from being registered in 2 different states. There's ideas and then there's implementation, and they're not necessarily the same thing.
No, fair enough.
If Eric was implemented poorly, and I don't have a reason to doubt anything that Amber said about it, then it's not that the idea is bad. It's that the way that was put in place was bad, and we need to try to come up with something to make it so that it works better, because certainly in this day and age, people move all over the country all the time. Yeah. And that's how people wind up being able to vote in 2 different places. It's not as much of an issue here in Oklahoma as it is in places like the people who maintain homes in New York and Florida and things of that nature in different states where there's more back and forth. And we've seen that. I also wanted to mention the Heritage Foundation has a database of the people who have actually been convicted of election issues. And I would encourage people to check it out. It's not, you don't have huge schemes so much as you have individuals doing different things in different places. And it does show, some cracks that can probably be tightened up.
Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. Wendi, man, the great thing about Amber is she knows all those rules, and she knows the laws. And that's really, honestly, I think everybody who knows, especially after, what happened to me with the election board, my bottom line here is if it's a law, follow the law. If you don't want to follow it, get rid of the law. But we're going to selectively follow law crap I'm done with it. I'm just simply done with it. And I don't care what it takes to get the law off. If you're not going to follow it, quit writing them and get it off the books. So Amber, anytime the specific law and you can just jump in there and throw that down, please do that. So Wendi, I'm going to bring you in because I think the thing that Amber said and then that Chris said, and I had it in my head, and then when I brought you in, it went out of my head. But my idea was something. So Chris was talking about, hold on a second. I muted your mic because you were typing and I could hear it in the background. So Chris is saying there are other ways to get to the bottom of bloated voter rolls other than re-registering everything. And tell me if I'm wrong, Chris, and his main concern is that if we re-register everybody, there are a lot of people who pay, literally zero attention. They only know about the general election, right? And they'll show up to their old polling place and go, but wait a minute, I can't vote here. You're telling me, what happened? So, and I see that as an issue. But Amber is telling us there are specific laws on the books that regulate this stuff. We're just not really following the law. Is that correct, Amber? Am I getting it?
Yes. To some extent, yes. But are they doing it to the full extent as well, right? Okay. And are they doing it often enough following it?
So give me your take on all of that, Wendi. Let's see if you can pull all of that together.
Okay, first of all, I was not typing. That was my cat. So this is real life, people.
Sounds like a meme.
As you saw behind me, the cat jumped up on I had to let the cat in. We were talking earlier, pets are sometimes worse than children.
Okay, well, don't use your time on the cat.
Okay. So as far as Eric is concerned, and I looked into this and wrote up an article on it a couple of years ago. This was in 2022. Wrote up an article on Eric, and it was published in Ignite Liberty. The Eric system was bad for multiple reasons, and not just the ones that Amber stated. Eric required the state sign a contract, and if the state did not follow that contract, the state would be kicked out. So Eric was very explicit, and its contract was very specific on the requirements from the state. And my whole issue was you had about 30 states at that time where Oklahoma was one voice, and 29 other states would help determine what happened with our voter rolls. And what Amber said was absolutely true. We already have the mechanisms in the state of Oklahoma that Eric was using to clean our own voter rolls. So why we were farming them out to a third party to begin with was beyond my comprehension. To me, that seems like a waste of money. But also, one of the terms of the contract was Eric needed access to our motor vehicle records, and then they did not want to know any status of citizenship on any of those records. They literally did not want to know. And if you gave them that information, or something else, then they may consider that contract void. There were all kinds of problems with Eric when you called up the contract and looked at it and what the states were signing. So that was a huge red flag to me. They seem to be more concerned with the state putting people on the voter rolls than actually cleaning them up. The emphasis seemed to be in the wrong place. And so when people started raising questions about Eric, they were very well founded. And I was happy to see that the state of Oklahoma did take us out of the Eric system. However, that law still says that we can join a multi-state voter registration organization. So we wanted that law completely repealed, myself and others. And what we got was the state removing or not fully joining Eric. But that law needs to be changed, and it actually needs to be repealed, in my opinion, because I believe that Oklahoma can maintain our own voter rolls, and we should, because Eric was not doing anything that we were not already doing. Now, as far as the motor vehicle records go, I believe, Amber's also correct. The states already have a mechanism where they're talking back and forth, where people can be removed. But if we go through and we maintain our own voter rolls and have people on top of them all the time and get in and do this in a process every year or two, then that would be great. I believe the state already is supposed to be doing that. The question is, how efficient is that process, and is it being followed? And like Jenni, what you said with your issue with the election board and the rules versus the laws, and how are these being implemented, the devil's always in the details, right? So we can have all the laws and all the rules and have them all be great, but the issue is, are they being followed? Are they being implemented properly? And people need to oversee that and watch and make sure that that's what's happening. So, and when they do so, that needs to be welcomed, and they don't need to be removed from election boards for that. They don't need to be investigated for that.
Does that happen, Wendi?
I don't know, Jenni. Has that happened recently in Oklahoma? I think so. So we have all kinds of issues and problems, and Title 26 is just one of the many where it contradicts the law. We have contradictions with the Constitution. We have the administrative rules, which Amber has researched ad nauseum, and she is so wonderful with that. They violate Title 26, or they violate the Constitution. It's all. It needs to be overseen right now, and it needs to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb, and it needs to be basically revamped. So,
okay, so let me stop you there on that. Because Michael, you want to go ahead and put that? We had a really interesting comment. We've got a couple. So Russia rigs elections through mass false registration of stolen identities. Errors are errors are ported in to suppress, redirect ballots, plant fraud to frame the opposition. Moscow's illegals equal dead voters. Yowza.
That might go to the point of our voter rolls being subject to malicious alteration. As a matter of fact, all of our systems that are online, all of our records that are online in the voting system, especially the voter rolls, in that study that was done in 2018, remember, by the National Academies of Science, and also was reported, I believe, in the Senate Select Intelligence Committee.
Oh, wow.
Hackers can get in. It's not that difficult. And it's not that difficult to alter these rolls. And people are going to have to make a decision. How secure do you want your elections to be? How secure do you want our elections to be? Do you want convenience, or do you want secure elections?
Right. Okay, so there's another comment that's on here, because we're at 52 minutes right now. And so what I'm thinking about is the last 5 minutes of everybody. And Amber, I honestly feel like we need to do another show with just you again to talk about the specific problems with not following the laws and what the laws are that we're not following. And I think we need to do a follow-up on that. And by the way, for people who are watching, our Friday replay is going to be Amber and Terry talking again about how they looked at the voter rolls and what they found. And if you don't watch that, I don't comment about voter integrity in Oklahoma, because what they found was not their, it wasn't their opinion. It was literally what they found in the voter rolls. And I think it's really important. So stay tuned for that on Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. It'll repeat. So we had a comment on Rumble that I want to throw out, because I think this is kind of the way we probably need to end the show today. Let's talk about what specifically we can do, if whether or not you believe that we need to re-register everybody. How are we going to do that? Okay. If you don't believe we need to re-register everybody, what then are we going to do? So this, we had this comment from Hayes Cattle on Rumble. What if we do a rolling purge over the course of 5 years? We re-register voters at the polls when they vote. So in 2025, we begin the purge. Anyone who hasn't re-registered by 2030 is removed. So I think that's an interesting comment. I think that's something to think about. So as we go into the final stretch here, you guys keep that in mind. And so I think, Amber, you're up.
Yeah, so I'll actually address that, what Hayes says, the rolling purge. The idea of it actually doesn't sound too bad. The problem that I have with it, that I think that is not great, you'd have to change the laws before you could do that, is that we don't require a picture ID or signature verification, quite frankly, at the poll at that moment. Right. I've never seen anybody verify that my signature matched my signature on my driver's license if they ask for it. Is my signature even on the voter ID card? Right? My picture's not there. So you'd have to change the law for the requirement at the polls, I think, in order to do the rolling purge. But I don't dislike the rolling purge. I also have to say that, if you're not purging the rolls and you're going to the polls, Chris, like what you said with the address change, like somebody moved, right, and they went to their old polling site. I like that idea. If you can bring a piece of mail, electric bill, something that states that you have moved, and you can bring verification, it has to have a photo ID, etc., not just a voter ID card. Verify you are. I would be fine with that. I don't think it's going to solve the problem in the grand scheme of things. I think you'd have a myriad of different things, like the DMV stuff, for people that are out of state, but that could help resolve some of the issues. As far as the purge, I don't know. Other than this really purge that Hayes put out, I like the idea, but the ID stuff has to be shored up. The as far as completely archiving the voter rolls and then having everybody re-register, I don't know the path forward and the right way to do it, honestly. That's something that I really need to be looking into. Jenni, I know we discussed before, Florida did a purge quite some time ago. Those that of us that agree with doing that, maybe we should do the research and reach out to people in Florida and find out how they implemented it and find out what the nuances were and what the cost was.
Because it made a huge difference in Florida. Huge.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's the pantry analogy. The pantry is such a disaster. There's no way you can fix it unless you take everything out and put it back and organize it. I really do feel like we're at that point. I do like the other ideas, like what you said, Chris. I don't think it'll solve the problem 100%. It'll solve a small subset. And what we have is a larger issue when we know 40% roughly of the roles are an issue, just on one data set. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. Anything else? Because you still got 2
minutes.
minutes.
I'm sure, but you go ahead.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Go, Chris.
So a couple of things that I want to touch on. First of all, the state election board does do something, does do a purge every 2 years. In the off year, the odd number of years, they do a purge. And that is based on if somebody has not voted in it for a sufficient length of time, they try to contact them by mail. And if they don't hear back from those people, then those people are purged. And I don't know, perhaps that process can be expanded in some ways.
Well, hold on. I think Amber's got an answer for you. So hold on.
You're correct, Chris. It's roughly 10 to 12 years because it's if somebody hasn't voted in 2 presidential election cycles, and then there's an April in there that they get purged. But you're sitting there with an inactive voter on the rolls for upwards of 9-10 years before they're ever removed, which is still inflating our numbers. So if, let's say, Comanche County, where I'm at, they're saying 10% of the people have gotten out to vote. Well, those numbers aren't accurate, right? So
I'm not here to say that it's perfect.
It's a panacea.
That could be built upon. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was the going back to the address issue. We have seen candidates for office be challenged based on where they live. The former Attorney General Mike Hunter is an example. When Patrick Wyrick was being appointed to the state Supreme Court, that's another example. And we've seen the state election board rule that where you're registered to vote matters far more than where you actually live. I mean, Mike Hunter lived in Virginia. I think there's some things that can be done in the law to shore that up quite a bit as far as people running for office, which leads me into, there was the comment that somebody made about Russia, about their voter rolls. Well, another thing that Russia does that we also see in a lot of states here is that they use the law to prevent people from running for office. Ballot access restrictions and things like that, where where you get rid of your competition by making sure they can't even get on the playing field. So that is, that's kind of a tangent to our subject today, but as a libertarian, I feel obligated to bring that up. But I think that there's a number of things that could be done that I think would can enhance our voter rolls. But even as Amber said, not sure how to go about doing a purge. That is, that is really a big step to take. That would, to re-register everybody. If there's different classifications of people in situations that are problematic that we can address one step at a time, I think that might be a better way to go about it. That is piecemeal, but the last thing that I want somebody to have is, if they really should be able to vote, have them show up at the polling place and not be able to do so. We do have the provisional ballots, but even so, as somebody who has used voter rolls, who goes out and knocks on doors, based on those voter rolls, and talks to people face to face based on those voter rolls, I've done it all across the state. I find that the people who vote regularly, there's there's really not very many issues that are of concern to me. Most of the time I go knock on the door and the person I'm looking for is at the place they're supposed to be. So that's my hands-on experience, and I'm not opposed to having a better, tighter voting system, but I think we do pretty good here, especially compared to other states. Let's not let's be cautious about how we go about this, so that we don't take a good idea and turn it into a bad implementation.
Okay, let me just say this. I think, I personally believe, because I was an observational scientist for years, so I personally believe that personal observation is super important in any kind of study. But I also do want to point out that the libertarian roles are kind of a fraction of what the rest of them are. And libertarians are libertarians because they specifically don't want to be anything else. So you're not, my personal opinion is you're probably not going to find too many anomalies in the libertarian community for those specific reasons. So it's kind of like fallacy of small sample. And I'm not trying to put libertarians down or anything. I'm just trying to make those points that it's a smaller community. Those people who are in the libertarian community are very specific about their voting habits and what they do, more so than an independent, even Republicans and Democrats. So, that's the only thing I just wanted to say about that observation. So Wendi, do you have anything to tie us kind of up? Because we're at an hour, and I think the sad thing is I wish we had like 2 hours or a day to have a conference on this. And I really don't think that would be a bad thing to do, is to put something together like that. And even invite somebody from the state election board, if somebody would come and somebody would come and not be, but so I
didn't know you're a comedian, Jenni.
Sorry. But it is really great, I think, to have this conversation and move it forward. And I'm sorry that we didn't have more time. But Chris, I really do appreciate you coming on, and Amber, I always appreciate you for just sticking to the law and knowing what that is. And you're my fave for that. But when do you want to take it and kind of wrap it up? Let's wrap it up kind of in 5 minutes, and then we'll call it a day for now.
Okay, sure. I believe actually Chris has some really good ideas, and they're probably, really good to be implemented after we deal with the roles that we already have. And after we get those cleaned up going forward, he's got some really good ideas to help keep the roles clean now. But the roles that we have right now are so bad. And we've looked at this for 3 years, and everyone that I have talked to in election integrity that has worked the problem, that has researched this, and basically agree that the rolls are beyond saving right now. So there is a way, and there are various ways that we can archive the rolls and re-register Oklahomans in a rolling fashion to make sure people are not left off the rolls where they don't get to the polls, and have that situation where they are told they can't vote. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that to happen to anyone when they go vote. However, I would also say that being a mom and being a substitute teacher and everything else, there comes a point where people are adults, and if you give them enough time, and if we figure out enough ways, we can get everybody that is voting that wants to vote. Because being on the voter registration roll is a choice that people make to begin with. It's not required. People want to vote, they go register, they vote. We have people, we can have people go out to nursing homes and re-register all the elderly that are there that can't get out and do that. But there comes a point in time where we may actually just have to tell people it's your responsibility, and get all of the news out there that perhaps this is happening and you need to re-register by a certain date. Right now, we're working on trying to get everybody over into the Real ID system, right? I'm not in that system.
I'm not going to be in that system.
I don't want to be in that system. I have a passport and I have a regular driver's license, but the state is working towards that as we go too. So the state of Oklahoma can figure out how to do just about anything the state of Oklahoma wants to do. And the legislators could probably come up with some really good ways to make sure everyone gets re-registered within the law, following current law, following any national laws on voter registration that need to be implemented. We can do this if we put our minds to it, and make sure that people can vote at the polls when they show up to do so, to the point where maybe we don't archive the rolls until we're finished with the re-registration. We could even do that. I mean, how long does it take the state election board to redo all of the cards when we have redistricting and get those mailed out? This is a bit of a bigger job, but I believe that it can be done and be done within a couple years at the latest, and get that finished. But also, we have to realize that right now, the inaccuracy of the rolls is affecting things like Chris said with the candidates. We just watched a candidate form where they admitted they were using inaccurate rolls to determine candidacy of the people that we are voting on to make our laws. That's a huge problem. Everybody's got to think about what the voter rolls are used for, and the fact that we're using inaccurate data and an inaccurate set of circumstances to try to determine what's going to happen in real time with our candidates and who we're voting for, to make our laws. It's very concerning to me as a citizen. But like I said, Title 26 needs to be revamped in multiple ways. We've got all kinds of issues in the state when it comes to voting, to elections. And the voter rolls are just one of them. We've looked into several other issues in the state, and we have problems kind of across the board. And we always kind of say the sad thing is that if Oklahoma is one of the best states in the country when it comes to elections and election integrity, then sometimes, to be quite honest with you, I'd almost hate to see the worst. So there are multiple issues that are not being addressed in the state, and the voter roll situation is just one of them.
Okay. All right. Well, that does it for that. And like I said, I kind of good job, Michael. That's nice. He does such a great job with that. Ladies and gentlemen, I just think, and Chris, sincerely, thank you for reaching out, because if we don't have these conversations, nothing gets better. So thank you so much for taking your time to be on this morning and discussing this. And Amber, again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. You just are my new best friend in so many ways. And I thank you for knowing what those laws are and sticking to that. And we'll continue to have you and Wendi on, and Chris, you're welcome on anytime if you want to give me a buzz again and say, hey, let me know. But thank you three, for being on. I think we did a pretty good job. I wish we'd had more time, but I think, does everybody feel like they got kind of a say, or what are we thinking? Okay. All right. So we'll wind it up for this time, but we'll still keep the conversation going. I mean, absolutely. So again, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Wendi. And we'll sign off for now. But we'll absolutely keep this conversation going. So thanks again for being with us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So, hello, Michael. That I feel like you just kind of did a lot of the production stuff and didn't really say anything today. Bless your heart.
Well, the things I would bring up, would be just my own experience, which you're familiar because you had, you ran for office also. But I'll just tell you, in the 15 square mile of my campaign, which was 25,000 registered voters, we knocked literally almost 15,000 doors. And we did that. And I had large groups of people. And just to expand on that, we had massive lists of very targeted voters, from the election board, just like you're supposed to go get your list of your voter rolls and you're trying to pick your demographics and people that fit in there. Our lists were trash. I mean, we started voting, the people weren't at the right house. They weren't the right party or this or that. I mean, and we wound up just literally going and hitting every single door in a neighborhood is what we had to wind up doing. And like I said, we spent thousands of dollars in mailers, which a lot of them came back to us. And I mean, it was so, you're just like, what the heck? But then to top it all off, I mean, our real issues here are not like the people going in person on the day of election to the poll. That's not really the issue here. And, we didn't really emphasize that enough, I think, during our talk, and we can do that later, but it's not the person going to the poll. That's not where the real issues are. It's the exorbitant amount of people that are on the roll that aren't there that could possibly, I'm not saying it's happening, it's not happening, even though I think it probably is happening. The amount of people that are not going to the poll that are getting votes sent in, whether you're just on the automatic absentee list or whatever it may be, that's where the real issues are. That's where you see these mysterious things just show up is not necessarily the people that are going to the poll. So, in person.
To follow up on what you said, my observation is really the same as yours. And I've told this story before. So when I just after I lost my election for mayor for the second time, we took, before my term was up, we were going to have a sales tax vote in the city. And people just flat don't pay attention to general election cycle voting. I mean, you can even tell people that there's a primary election and they look at you like maybe you have two heads. People don't, for the most part, do not pay attention. They don't know that there are city tax votes that are increasing, city tax votes that are coming up, or school bond elections or school board elections, or all of these off general cycle votes. They just don't know. So we wanted to send out letters to people just saying, hey, there is a tax increase that's going to be up for a vote on this date. Make sure you put it on your calendar and research it and come to vote. We didn't tell anybody how to vote. We just warned them that there was an election coming up. Oh my gosh, a bunch of us in the neighborhood got together to stuff envelopes and, post them and send them out. I didn't count, so you can't hold me specifically to this, but I want to say a quarter of the envelopes back.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, that's nuts. Why am I getting all these things back? And plus, like you said, it's a waste of postage. That's expensive stuff. And I saved them for a really long time, thinking I was going to take them to the election board and say, just for your information, these came back for me. So these can't be right. And I think that's maybe part of this. Nobody talked about that on our debate this morning, but I think maybe that's part of something that we need to do. If you're a candidate and you send out something and you get a bunch back, take them to your county election board and say, hey, look at this, fan them all out and go, you need to check these voter registrations because I got all these back in the mail.
Yeah. Well, and I'll make one more caveat to my own experience. Okay. So my race was in 2 different counties. So I dealt with 2 different county election offices. And I was warned kind of, hey, you need to really get on the absentee side of your race very early. Wendi, that's how I met Wendi in the first place. Wendy's like, hey, I'm not in your district, but you better get on the absentee side of your race, like right now. She just drilled down the entire list. So when I went to get all that data, this is well ahead of my race, well ahead of everything. I wanted to contact all those absentee voters, send them a mail piece, knock on their door, whatever. The one county election board didn't even give me the information that I asked. Never responded, never gave it to me in any capacity whatsoever. The other county election board gave me a document that was such a piece of garbage, you couldn't even get coherent information out of it. So, I mean, that always just was in the back of my mind. Why can I not be able to get in contact with the absentee voters? I mean, they'll give me a list of, 1 million people on there. How can I not go contact? So it just always sat, it just sat in the back of my mind like something. What is so hard about just giving a simple absentee list? Here's all the voters that are registered absentee in your area, in your district, and that was never produced with any kind of quality, efficiency, anything. And even after the fact, we were going to go canvass every one of the absentee votes because there was a abnormal amount of absentee votes in my race. We're going to go canvass every one of those. Never got.
You and Margaret Best.
Yeah,
both had just an inordinate number
of
absentee ballots.
So I mean, it just doesn't sit right. It just doesn't seem like it's open and fair and honest with integrity. I mean, it should be pretty easy. You got a computer database, you know who all these people are. It should be pretty easy to say, okay, here's all the people in your district that voted absentee. If you want to knock their door, go ahead. If you want to send them a mail piece, go ahead. Never happened. Couldn't get it. Couldn't extrapolate the data out of there.
Yeah, and that's the problem I had too. And with the Oklahoma County Election Board, the data that they give you is just terrible. They'll give you a CD, but it's all a PDF file, basically. And there's no manipulation you can do to it. You can't even really make, it's extremely hard to make mailing labels out of. It was just, there's got to be something. I mean, we're paying taxes for that.
Yeah.
These county election boards to operate. They really need to do a better job. Some of them. I mean, Oklahoma County has some issues for sure.
I don't know if it was you or Wendi, or it could even have been Amber, but one of you said, the state is pretty good at doing something when they want to actually do it. I think that might have been Wendi, but that's what it really comes down to. Do they really want to fix? Do these politicians and legislators, do they really want to fix this thing if they're in control of it now? I mean, no, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good point. All right. Well, I personally was glad that we did that. I think, I kind of wish we could solve all the problems of the world, in one debate. And of course we cannot, but I do think that was helpful.
Yeah. I don't agree with Chris necessarily. I do think that it could be pretty easily purged and pretty easily re-registered, and you could accommodate people at the poll. There, you can make very easy accommodations for if someone shows up at the poll, they're not registered. You could probably within a matter of 5 minutes get them re-registered and allow them to vote, at the poll. Because of this purge,
right at one specific time.
Yeah.
Yes. Not have same day registration as a law.
No.
But just for the time that we do the purge, you get that same day. You're registered for that.
If they purge now, then they could allow every single person that wants to vote come November, or come, even this next primary. Probably have to go, November, but. Every single person that shows up, if they're not on their roll because it's been purged, they didn't get re-registered, you could make some type of accommodation to re-register them. You could validate them. You could see their ID. You could, see an electric bill, whatever. You could very easily do that and solve the problem, get them in, get the database clean, and then have a better way to maintain it going forward.
Well, and that was an excellent point too, I thought, that Amber made about, look, take your electric bill. You have to do that to get your kids registered in public school. And you don't even have to do that to get registered in voting. I mean, come on, people. I think that's just nuts. And she's right. You don't have to. I don't think we ever did. Did we ever pass voter ID, Wendi? Did we? We never did pass voter ID, so you don't have that. I mean, there are just so many things that we could be doing in this state to make sure that we're doing all that we can do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's 1:21, so let's hop off of here. But let me just say, I said earlier what's going to be on Friday. We're going to replay Amber and Terry and them talking about the deep dive they did into the Oklahoma voter rolls after the 2020 election. You really want to watch that. It'll be live at 9 a.m. on our channel like regular, but you can always find it on our YouTube and Rumble channels. The other thing I just love about Amber, she's so easily understood. If you can't understand what she's saying, I'm gonna challenge your understanding of English because she does such a great job. So make sure you do that. But next Wednesday, we've got another really good live show for you. We're going to have our visit. V1SUT Vantage blogger is going to be on next Wednesday, and she's going to be coming on with one of the women that have come to her to talk about what happened to her and her molestation by an Oklahoma coach. And she's just such a brave lady. She's been on here several times. She did a press conference with Sherry Conley not very long ago. It's really, I know it's hard for people to believe that this stuff goes on. And I know a lot of people would rather just go, and not listen. But you really need to tune in and find out what's going on and hear her in her own words and listen to Vantage kind of walk us through this. So that'll be next Wednesday. So please tune in for Amber and Terry on Friday, and we'll see you again next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Anything else, Michael?
That's it. We can always use any kind of support. Appreciate everyone that was on today. Share the video. That's one of the best ways, or just donate to us at our website or Patreon, $5 here or there.
Yeah. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great week. Bye.